It was into this type of situation that the new keepers walked, risking their lives to reach out to the gifted ones, the ones who would convince the crowds they were to be trusted. All of the groups faced suspicion and the danger of being captured and hurt by those they sought to help. They needed the help of a trusted insider to get the approval of the crowd. As with everything they faced, it was not going to be easy. For Alice and Randall it was much the same situation. She and Randall had moved through the doorway and toward the noise created by a large gathering, intent on quietly slipping in to blend with the refugees. It took one quick look at the people standing further down the corridor to make her quickly shimmer out of sight. Everyone that she saw in that split second before they crossed into the lighted area looked exactly like Randall. There was not one person standing inside the central cavern that did not have red hair and fair coloring. Men, women and children here all looked enough alike to make this one brown-haired, green-eyed girl stick out like a cat in a room full of dogs. In these times, looking different was definitely not the way to win over the crowd. From the moment they entered, she was in invisible mode, sticking close to Randall as he was greeted warmly by those around him. Alice was using up a lot of energy remaining hidden for so long, but she was both afraid to reveal herself and to leave Randall's side. When he moved among the people he looked so much alike, she stayed with him, always close by, waiting, watching the people that watched Randall. She was getting really tired now, but felt she needed to stay the way she was, quietly hiding beside him while scoping out the men that moved along the edge of the crowd, carefully studying those inside the group. Alice got the impression that these men watched with a purpose, stern faces taking note of all that passed before them. They had begun to whisper among themselves, faces turned in Randall's direction. She couldn't tell if it was him they were looking at or one of the two people next to him. A few days ago Randall had become quite friendly with two men that had entered the cave shortly after him. They had been the last 3 people to come in from the outside. While the men had been welcomed openly enough because they were human-looking, they were still being watched very closely by a few of those already present. It wouldn't have been so bad, the watching. It was a natural reaction to what had happened to their world, but Alice, who hadn't had sleep in close to 2 days, was beginning to get a bad feeling about these watchers. The watchful men, 5 in all, had been listening carefully. The oldest one in their group, a woman named Isabel. Isabel had lost her entire family to the monsters that had descended upon the upper worlds. She was an angry, grief-stricken and determined woman, and that made her dangerous to these 3 men she didn't recognize. This frightened Alice badly. She was on high alert, staring at Isabel until her eyes hurt, watching the woman just as hard as she was watching Randall. The old woman's small bent form loomed in the background. Red hair laced liberally with grey topped a face that held the saddest green eyes Alice had ever seen. But the sadness was laced with something else, a strong need for revenge. Rage seethed beneath the seemingly calm exterior. The young woman felt it radiate from every pore in Isabel's body, and it was this emotion that motivated her as she directed her small group of followers. Randall wanted to talk to Alice badly. He had noticed the woman too, and he was just as disturbed by what he saw. She handled the men around her with ease, saying just enough to arouse their suspicions, playing on their fears. These men were scared but hung on every word she said, and it worried him, because what she seemed to be saying was that she had a strong opinion there needed to worry about the 3 men working under their close supervision. The men in question just happened to be Randall himself and the 2 men he had befriended. She had singled them out because she hadn't seen them around her village before. There were a few places she hadn't been, and it was possible that they were from one of the remote farming communities that scattered the land, but she didn't like the fact that they were the last ones to straggle in after her group had been here a day or 2. A small part of her also resented the fact that they had made it down here without a scratch while her own people had been brutally murdered. They were 3 healthy-looking men who should have died fighting the enemy, just like her sons had. It didn't matter that other men had made it safely to this place. She knew those men had seen them killed to protect those around them. These men were strangers and all about the age her boys had been when she watched them beaten and ripped apart. They were dead and these men weren't. So she had them watched, and she waited for a sign, something to justify what she might ask the men around her to do.